Unknown Shadow 123 asks, would you recommend working on the doors in today's world where stabbings are more likely?
Stabbings were more likely 20 years ago than they are now. everything is monitored a lot more now. There's a lot more policing of the doors. So you probably were more likely to get stabbed 20 years ago, but that is obviously still a threat. And I can't tell anybody whether they should do it or not, but I personally wouldn't recommend it because it's a job with grave consequences. 4 of my friends were murdered who worked the doors. Lots of my friends lost their sanity. Lots of them lost their liberty. It was worth it for me, but I often think, as I've said before, that I did the doors and wrote about it and kind of taught all the lessons I've learned from it so that other people didn't need to go down that path. You get someone like Mahatma Gandhi, who brought the British Empire to its knees non-violently. He didn't become a bouncer. He didn't learn to fight. He just learnt to monitor his own endocrine system and control his own endocrine system. He was a monster. He was a very small person, but had this massive consciousness, this massive awareness. He dined with kings and queens, this man, and he brought the British Empire to its knees non-violently without having to do any of those things. So if you can master things like palate, if you can get the palate in order, the endocrine system tends to fall into line. So you control the senses, and when you control the senses, you control the self. So I think there are other ways to do it. It'd be good for you to have a look at some biographies on Gandhi, and just look at his methodology. So it's all internal. The whole thing is internal.
Ben Best 988 asks, hi Geoff, struggling with getting my palate right. Any tips? Thank you for your courage.
Oh, thanks. That's really kind of you. Yeah, it's going to be a struggle. I said to Sharon once, God, people are struggling with palate. They're struggling with the basics. And she said to me, palate isn't basics. Palate is advanced. I can count on one hand the amount of people I know that can control their palate. I would say that you've just got to find a bigger purpose. When you know that palate leads to control of the senses, and that we can't really advance spiritually while we haven't got control of the endocrine system, it will give you great inspiration to get up in the morning and really work on your palate. After my first major epiphany, working on palate was easy. I just knew what to eat, I knew what not to eat, and I knew that my higher level game wasn't accessible without control of palate. I knew it wasn't. But then later on, after the honeymoon period had gone, I struggled again with palate. So you have to keep finding the purpose. Why are you doing it? It's not enough just to think about health, although that's important, and aesthetics are irrelevant. You've got to find a stronger purpose. And the purpose for getting the palate right is control of the endocrine system. When you get the food correct, the sensual body starts to fall into alignment. When we get the senses right, you get control of the self. When you get control of yourself, you get control of the world. So your purpose is that you are, the reason palate is difficult is because you're asking to get control of the world through control of the self. That's why it's difficult. So I would say celebrating the fact that it's difficult, celebrate that, and get up every day and be relentless and don't give up on it. Just stay with it. The rewards will be disproportionate to the effort.
This is from Mike T 79. Back in the day, if you had a chance, would you have fought in the UFC?
No. No, I was no good at competition. I wasn't a competition fighter. 2 of my guys, or 3 of them, fought in some of the early Vale Tudo matches, and I think Justin won a European title and Matty won a British title. But we weren't competitors, we weren't sportsmen. It's not how we trained, it's not what... We went in there just... or my students went in there just to have a play and just to see how it felt. But if you know anything at all about my martial arts days, you'll know that I wasn't a good competitor. It just wasn't my skill set. So no, I wouldn't have gone into it because I think I'd have been out of my depth. I was good on the doors, I was good in that environment, but the UFC, these guys are, you know, they're like elite athletes. It just wasn't my skill set, so no.
Jake MC14 asks, advice when stuck in a rut?
If you're stuck in a rut and you've hit a dark patch, that's the entry point to internal rigour, to investigation. So if you've hit a rut, that's good. Your body's speaking to you, your mind is speaking to you, the environment is speaking to you. Are you pushing too hard? Are you not pushing enough? You know, are you pushing when you should be yielding? Are you got on the wrong path? Have you got a strong enough purpose? I can't tell you, but I can say that if you're in a rut, there is a purpose behind that, and it's asking you, it's a harbinger. It's not a harbinger of doom, it's a messenger of hope. It's asking you to look closely at your life and go beyond the first two levels. You've got to really deeply investigate this, and this will take you into a much more positive light. You might have to read a couple of books, you might have to pick something up to get the inspiration going again. And if you just ask in your meditation, your prayer, say, I'm in a rut, can you guide me towards some help? The right book or the right conversation will come. So I don't see being in a rut as a bad thing. I see it as a portal to investigation or deeper investigation.
Gary Brickley 7 asks, have you any plans on coming to Ireland? You have a huge following here in Limerick.
Oh, that's really nice, thank you. I've been to Ireland a couple of times before. I've got no plans to leave my front room, to be honest. But, you know, I try to duplicate myself as many times as I can in the books and the talks and the films. But I have a covenant with God, and I basically go where he tells me. And if he tells me to go to Ireland, then I'll go. But at the moment, I haven't had that note. So, but I hope to at some point, because that's where my family comes from. My mum is from the north, and I do love Ireland, and I've always had great support from Ireland. So hopefully at some point I'll see you.